This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppelliser.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So how's everybody doing? Good, I hope? Everything is good? But of course, in the space of a week, many adventures can happen. And this story will be an adventure of Marlene having a coming to Jesus moment with reality, as in, how's this? And I think everybody's like, run into this, like modern times, workforce availability, blah 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 blah. Anyway, let me you'll see what I mean. I'm telling you. About a week ago, we realized that our freezer and our refrigerator, which is only 5 years old, was going belly up because we touched some meat and it was like, man, this is not supposed to be soft, getting soft. Usually is really rock solid. Plus, we have a stand-up freezer, but anyway, so we're like, oh, this is not good. Okay. So we, at that same day, of course, everything happens when we realized this thing is not getting better. Like we turned up, the thermos, not the thermostat, but the settings make it cold. We're like, okay, maybe did you hit the wrong button? Nothing. We realized this thing is going. So first reality thing was we couldn't find anybody to come out and do the same day repairs on a freezer. All right. It was like, and at that same day, I'm having, it's like, did I do this intentionally? But I know I didn't, which was I was having estimates for people to come and cut some trees down. And all of a sudden, I'm telling the reality check is I was used to calling some places where you could say, hey, can you, especially, this is not like overnight, but do you have somebody come out for, this is like a 5 year old, I think, they did the coolant, getting somebody that day or the very least the same day. I'm calling. This is a Thursday, and everybody's telling me no. I can get out there maybe Monday or Tuesday. One lady I think took pity on me and says, "Look, I'm going to give you a phone number. Call them. They might be able to go out there." Sure enough, like thank God, the inside scoop. They come out here. Real nice guy. I'm in New York, down in Florida, of course. And he tells me, look, this, I guess the equivalent to Freon for air conditioning, some type of coolant. It's got a leak, he says. The leak could be little, it could be small. I can refill it, and it might last you 3 months, 3 years, 5 years, or not at all. He goes, and if not, you might as just well get a new refrigerator because to take this thing apart, plus this was not really an expensive refrigerator we have. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Just refill it, and maybe it'll buy us some time. Nah, well, he left. Sure enough, the next couple of days, we're looking, and we're like, no, this isn't working. By like Saturday or Sunday, no, I take that back. By maybe Monday or Tuesday, or within a few days, we realized, yeah, at the beginning when it was brand new in there, it cooled, but then we realized, no, this thing is not working. And that's another thing we realized. This coolant also works for the refrigerator. So eventually your refrigerator will stop keeping stuff cool the way. Anyway, to make a long story short, we started shopping around for, first of all, this is another thing. You got to get something that's going to fit through the door. We don't have a double door. I used to live in houses before which had double doors. So there was never an issue like, is it going to fit through the door? Where I live now, no, that's not an option. And then the way that it is, there's a certain amount of space with shelving and cabinets. So, not that we were planning to buy one of those big mega things. Bottom line, I purchased the refrigerator on Wednesday or Thursday or something like that, and I got it out here a couple of days ago. It took like a Tuesday. That's my. That's another thing to my coming to Jesus moment where it was gonna take 5 days to deliver a refrigerator, and it was like what? And I'm telling you, we had to scramble. We bought dry ice that didn't work. We were stuffing. We have little refrigerators for drinks. We were stuffing stuff and putting stuff in the freezer, and we are like, okay. And we were, one of those things like you don't know how important a refrigerator is till you don't have it. I mean, I've been in situations like I said with no electricity because of hurricanes, but at least you prepare for that. How's that? And this was like, man, and it's again, you become spoiled. You become, even though you think I'm not, you become used to this instant gratification. Like everything is like on Amazon. You get it the next day or 2 days. You think I'm going to get this fixed tomorrow, today, or today, right? It's something like the refrigerator, and a refrigerator, of course. But tomorrow, they'll be here. They'll, I'll just, call and I'm here working with a guy. I even And he's like, "Well, I think we can get you one out there Tuesday." No, he says Monday. He goes, "Oh, the calendar just shifted Tuesday." I was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Is it because it's this model?" And he goes, "No, no, it's just." And I was like, "Son of a gun." Anyway, that's my story for this week. As in, you have like a moment of collision with the reality you think versus what the reality is. Okay, whether it's manpower, whether it's I don't know what it is to be honest with you. um, where, well, you better think of ways to, and we did. I'm not saying we did. I mean, we had to take things off our door to make, just to get one, because I said, you know what, let's get this old one. We unplugged it. It was like, that's it. It was done. There was nothing in there. I mean, whatever this leak was, I don't know how it just went, the whole went, whoosh. So anyway, I'm telling you that. I mean, once upon a time, this is how at least how I console myself. Once upon a time, people used to have ice boxes, and they used to put a piece of ice underneath, and everything was basically you were making stuff on a daily basis, and if you don't do what we do now, which is refrigerate things and freeze them long term, as in. So I was like, once upon a time, people did just fine. And it was like, yeah, but once you have it and you get used to it, you're spoiled. And yeah, that's that's my story for this week. Luckily, nothing happened with any of my animals, but that was one of those things where I hate to say it for lack of a better word. You need to keep an eye on at least, before things totally go south, like totally break. You get a repairman out there because you never know. I'm sorry. They might just not work anymore. Yeah, one of those deals. So anyway, now that I've like, you know, had my moment here, let me get on to the good stuff. The good stuff is who is the guest today at Stories of the Supernatural. This is the first time he's been here. His name is Gregory Fedora. And whether he is sitting around a campfire in a studio, Gregory will enlighten and entertain you with the most amazing stories. He has been seeking out the mysterious from a very early age. His goal is to document the history, mythology, and tales of the peculiar creatures from around the world. When he is not in search of a mysterious beast, he is spending time learning about others. As he says, the world is full of observers and participants. Why not be both? Which I think is a great saying. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Gregory?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, 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 good.
I'm
So,
sorry about your fridge.
oh man, you know what? It's just stuff that happens to you that all of a sudden, yeah. And you know what? Sometimes I tell my husband, you hear these people that are LARPers that, or they pay these games, where they live in this world where there's like, or it's like steampunkish, very little, no electricity or magic, but no, none of the amenities. I'm like, you know what? I think that if they got a dose of life
Oh
like
yeah.
that, the LARPing would be over very quickly.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah, it's like, nah, no, no, no electricity, no refrigeration, no air conditioning, no ice, no cold drinks. And yeah, that thing with the by candlelight, sure, that would get old real
Yeah.
soon.
You'd be like on Gilligan's Island, and you'd need the professor to make things better.
Yeah, and you hope you have a professor to make things
Yes.
better, for all you
Exactly.
know. And you know what? Sometimes you see in these movies, um, Now, some of these people, they bed down like in the outdoors, like they'll wrap themselves in a blanket, especially if it's cool. And I've been outdoors sometimes when it's been cool, and I'm thinking about how could they sleep? I'd be
Mhm.
freezing, but they make it look like it's like all tough. I'll just wrap myself up in this blanket, with no, nothing over you, and I'll just go to sleep. And I'm like, sure, you're not going to get any sleep. That is if the bugs leave you alone. But yeah, that's one of those things that people don't realize that, nah, you were
It,
used to climate
it's
control. How's that?
yeah, it's miserable when you do it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So yeah, most of those it's like what is that good in theory but not in practice kind of
oh,
situations.
yes, for sure.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's la vie. Even some of these adventure stories. But let me ask you, how did you become
Yeah.
interested in this field? Was it as a kid or how did that come about?
Yeah, it was when I was young. So when I was in like grade school, the schools had book fairs. I don't even know if they still do that anymore. I don't know that my kids ever mentioned going to book fairs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this book, and it was like a scholastic book, and on
Okay.
the cover was Bigfoot, a UFO, and the Loch Ness monster.
Wow.
And I got that book. And so I mean I was fascinated with it. And like at the time, Bigfoot and Loch Ness monsters and aliens. That was
R-
it.
Right, the
And
holy grail of
yeah. So and that was what the whole book was about. The thing is there wasn't a whole lot of pictures in it, but there was a lot of words and and I
hmm
read it and I had it for it and I lost it. Yeah, and I wish I could find it again because that was what really started me down that. And at the time, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have anything like that. So when you heard stories of monsters, it seemed to always be Bigfoot and Loch Ness. And I grew up in Ohio, and I stumbled across a story about the Ohio Octoman, who supposedly came out of the Ohio River and scared all these people in Cincinnati. And I was like, that's crazy.
I'd never
You
heard of
know,
that.
yeah, it happened back in I think it was the 60s. Um,
Okay.
so he came out, scared people, went away, never been seen again. Then you
Okay.
had like different grassman, which is Ohio's version of Bigfoot.
Right.
So you had those stories, and eventually in Michigan, like you had like the Hex Wolf, which is kind of Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia. Then in Michigan, they called it the Dog Man, but it's basically the same thing. It's like a wolf man type of creature.
I'm
But
sorry.
oh, that's all good. But yeah, so I I started hearing stories when I was young, but like again, to research them was really hard. And then as I got older, I kind of like put it aside. I, I was never really a ghost hunting kind of guy. That kind
Right.
of stuff. Uh, one of my really good friends, Chip, is total ghost hunting guy. He goes out and he actually goes to all the places, sleeps in the places, talks his way into these places.
Okay.
and
Yeah, it's
I've
like
gone,
okay.
yeah, I've gone on one ghost hunting with him, and that was enough for me because I'm one of these where if I can't see it,
Right.
like I watch those shows and like it always cracks me up that they're like hit me. And I'm like, dude, I wouldn't even tell someone I could see to hit me.
Hit
It's like,
me. Yeah, no, and
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
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 it makes you wonder if they did what they would do.
yeah. Like I was like an invisible dude. You're telling hit me. It's like, dude, if he hits you, you can't stop it.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
but yeah.
Exactly.
So
That's
like I
funny.
was always into that, like those stories and trying to find them. And then as I got older, I was able to like start researching and finding these stories. And I was also into mythology. And as I was reading myths and stories around the world, I was starting to see some common themes.
Okay.
Like no matter where they were in the world, they had these creatures. And I was like, well, that's weird that, okay, the Greeks talked about like this kind of thing, but so did the Aztecs. So did
Exactly.
the Egyptians. So did these. Like the Native Americans had this and this. And like, it's like, and they all are describing things that sound really similar. And I was like, that's fascinating. And I was like, so there must have been something. And so that's where I kind of went with all the stories is like whether or not it was exactly what these people say it was, or it was something they experienced and they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
understand it.
Sure.
And so that so then I started like chronicling, and I started, and that's like I the first book I did I can check, it's like Happy Little Monsters,
That's
volume
great.
one. Um so uh what I did is like I just remembered when I was young finding this book, the book I told you about, but there was
Okay.
no pictures. So
Okay.
I went and I just started making the pictures of like what people said they were, what how people described them in different creatures
Okay.
from around the world. And then I told it like a brief story of each one. And then that originally it was going to be I was just doing it and writing down. And my wife was like watching me do this, and she was like, "What are you gonna do with this?" I go, "I'm gonna make a book." She goes, "Do you realize how many pages of stuff you have right now?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah." She goes, "That is gonna be a huge book, and
Okay.
nobody's gonna be able to afford it." And so she was like, do it in volumes. I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that made sense." So I right now I have 4 volumes done,
There you
and
go.
I have plans for about 10 volumes.
I was gonna say that gives
So
me an idea of
that
how
way
much
it's
stuff you had
yeah,
collected, how much information, God, that you can fill up 10 volumes. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. And so that leads me to believe there's
yeah.
a
So
lot more
it's like
cryptids
I
out
mean,
there
because
than the
there's
regular
great
ones,
and
right?
yeah,
Yeah, because everybody, like you said, everybody knows. Okay, the
yeah,
Bigfoot,
yeah. There's it's
UFOs.
crazy. Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, and I kind of try to stay away from Bigfoot. There are a couple
No.
Bigfoot esque type monsters in here
Hmm.
in my books, but like it's the ones that are very funny, interesting, or the story is so crazy
Okay.
that it's like something happened, and because I don't do the one Murphysville mud monster, which
Okay.
is the story to me. This one is fascinating because basically the first people to spot it was this couple who were making out in a park. And this
Okay.
muddy Bigfoot esque creature came, hit their car, and scared the crap out of them. And they went directly to the cop.
Right. And that's usually a good sign that they were scared when they go directly to the cops. Because normally people are like, oh, if they were making it up or it was a hoax. But
Much they go to the cops and admit they were making out in the car and what happened,
they
and they
don't care
both
at that
ended up
point.
divorced.
Oh,
Yeah, at that
oh,
point, it's
because
like something
what? Because
scared them
they
so
were
bad.
they weren't. In other words, they were each married to different people. They were
Yes,
meeting.
yeah.
Oh my God.
And so
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was like, okay, that's such a fascinating story that a couple that
Yes.
was hiding this affair went to the
Yes.
cops because they got so scared. And
Yes.
I was
That
like,
that speaks
so to me, I was
volumes.
like, that, yeah, it's like, okay, well, yeah, if you're willing to get a divorce over this, and like, as far as I know, they didn't stay together, but
No,
from the
yeah, but
stories I've
exactly.
read,
But
but
they didn't just say, "Hey, well, won't talk about this to anybody." But yeah, yeah, the fact that they went all the way to
yeah,
the cops tells you that they whatever they saw scared them bad enough.
yeah, yeah, and it's really, and it's funny, and um, like I said, I grew up in Ohio. I did then live in Florida. Moved to Florida after college, and down there you have the skunk ape, and you have
Mm-hmm.
like some of the others. And I've met Dave Shealy,
Right.
who is the skunk ape guy. He
Right.
probably does not remember me. It was very brief, but I was like, when I was, oh my gosh, that's Dave Shealy. And so,
Yes.
um, but so the skunk ape, and there's a lot of stories there where people went, and again, it's like they get nothing for going in and saying something about it
Sure.
other than, dude, you're crazy. So, um, so I
Y-
found that fascinating. I now live up in Maryland,
Okay.
and like I kind of move around where work leads, and so here in Maryland, it's kind of funny. Like when I came up here and I was doing the books and stuff, and I was like thinking, I'm gonna make a funny documentary in my mind about Bigfoot. Just that was where my mind went. And as I was where I live, as I was researching the area, because I was like, well, I want to figure out where Bigfoot could be in this area. I stumbled across that. I live by this place called South Mountain, Maryland,
Okay.
and it's kind of like the mecca of Maryland for
Okay.
weird stuff. And I had
Okay.
no idea. And so, and then as I reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like bizarre. Like, forget Bigfoot. This whole mountain is crazier than Bigfoot. And
Okay.
and for me, it was weird that Maryland doesn't talk about it. They
I've
kind of,
never heard of it. I've never
yeah,
heard of it.
like it's not like this is like kind of like the Mothman,
Mm-hmm.
but for Maryland. And West Virginia celebrates Mothman. Like that's a big deal. They love the
Yes.
Mothman. They even
Yes.
have a statue with a really
Yeah,
nice
I've been
mutt.
there. I've been there, and I took a
Yeah,
picture. And I did the
yeah,
tourist thing. I took a picture in front of it. But yeah.
yeah. And you can grab its like nice like hiney that it's because
Yeah. Yeah.
Mothman
Yeah.
works out. But
Yeah.
so it's like they celebrate, but in Maryland they don't celebrate this. And I can tell you this mountain. It's called South Mountain, Maryland. It's in right near Middletown, Maryland, and I can actually see South Mountain from my backyard from where I'm at. Um, and on South Mountain, you have a bunch of stuff that happened. One, you have a guy named Michael Zittel who was known as the Wizard of South Mountain, and
Okay.
he was a healer and a bunch of other stuff. You also have uh, a hex wolf, also known as the Dwayyo, that stalks
Okay.
South Mountain. You also have a creature called the Snarly Owl, which is like the classic black dog that vanishes and shows up, disappears on there.
Okay.
And there's plaques on the mountain about these things, which
Oh
is
boy.
funny. The
Okay.
last the last one, which is probably the biggest deal on South, is called the Snallygaster. And
Okay.
this creature, and this is where you get some really fun stories. This creature is the oldest colonial cryptid in the United States.
All
It
right.
actually is older than the Jersey Devil.
Really?
Predates the Jersey Devil. The stories predate it by 5 years.
Okay.
And so to describe it, the creature is like a dragon, but has like bird beak, bird wings, but it has tentacles coming out of its neck.
Oh my God.
It's all around. Just you don't want to run into this thing.
Okay.
Um, so that the stories of this started back in the 1700s, and they kept going. Like there's people said they saw it here during the Civil War. There was a big battle called the Battle of South Mountain. Both Union and Confederate soldiers claimed to have seen the Snallygaster.
Wow.
Like there's stories about them seeing it. Now the most famous idea of this, it comes with Teddy Roosevelt, who actually wrote about the Snallygaster because
Okay.
in 1908, um, three moonshiners went missing on South Mountain.
Okay.
Everybody said the Snallygaster got them, and that was the story. It was in the newspapers in the area. It was actually in the New York Times. It was in like these like monster kills, like
Okay.
that. It was in the 1908, and you can find articles on it. Well, Teddy Roosevelt was pissed about it, and he was going to come hunt the Snallygaster because no monster kills an American when he's president. And he's
Okay.
going in. He and his son Kermit were going to come over, hunt this thing down because he was a hunter. He's into that, and he
Right.
also wrote about Bigfoot and wanted to hunt Bigfoot as well. But he goes 2 days before he was to come to South Mountain. They found the bodies of the moonshiners, and what had happened was their distillery had exploded,
Okay.
and that's how they died. Well, that's the story. Now, if you
Oh,
get into the cryptid
okay.
folklore,
Okay.
everyone says the idea that like where the stories go, like the whispered stories, are
Right.
that Teddy Roosevelt actually did come, actually did kill it, and Snelligaster had killed these people, and then he, knowing that America could not handle the idea of a dragon being in America, said,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, the distillery exploded. That's how they died."
Which sounds very plausible.
Yeah. So that's kind of the fun
That's a
story
great
here.
story. That is
Yeah.
a great story. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, and you should like I had, and the Snallygaster story is actually in my first book. Uh, and I've become fascinated with the Snallygaster just because it's near my house, and so I've been looking up all the different stories that are about it.
Let me
And
ask you, and this you said predates like the Jersey
Jersey
Devil.
Devil,
How far
yeah,
back did was it that you said it was? What?
1730.
Okay, yeah, this is pre-revolutionary times.
Yeah. The
Wow.
Jersey Devil story is, I think, 1735 is when you get
Okay.
the story of the Jersey Devil, where the mom, which is another great story, another folklore great story where the woman had 12
Yes.
kids. Then she found
Right.
out I'm going to have a 13th. And she said, this kid's going to be the devil. And I'm like, and she gives birth, it turns into the devil and flies to the chimney. And I
Right.
was like,
And
I
it's
mean,
like
yeah. It's like, I mean, it was 1735, they didn't have cable, so they had, they just kept having kids. So,
right, right, right. And it's like, and back then, I hate to say it, people,
yeah.
they were superstitious, or God knows, maybe it was a baby that was born with some type of problem. Who
Yeah.
knows? It could
Oh,
have been
yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you that, and this is the thing. Sometimes you realize, like you said, some stuff you could tell, oh, this is a tall tale. And then other people, whether,
Yeah.
how's this? Whether what they saw is accurately to them, it's the truth. What they saw
Oh, yeah.
something that wigged them out completely. Whether maybe, let's say, it could have been a bear, but
Yeah.
whatever they
It,
saw, they think this is not a bear.
exactly. And like with the sound gaps, it could have been a giant condor or a giant eagle, a
Yes.
bigger bird than they expected. I don't know. I mean, it got like I mentioned, the Wizard of South Mountain. One of the things he did, one of his powers, is he dispelled the fear of the darkness of night. And
Okay.
that was one of the things, and then I was like, what does that mean? Like people are scared, but then as I researched it, I found out what they meant was the monsters that live in the darkness of night. So he
Okay.
would go. People were afraid of, like I said, the snallygaster and the dwayal and the snarly owl. He would go and put like a hex. And to clarify, back then hexes weren't always bad. Like I know when we hear the word hex, we think, oh,
Right.
it's a bad spell. But back then, a hex was just basically a spell. It could be to do good or to do bad.
Right, because I
And
believe
so,
the Dutch, the powwowers, they did
yeah,
hexes.
yeah, that's what he was. He did powwows, and
Okay.
that's where his, I didn't know if you'd know if I threw out the word powwow, people would be like, what are you talking
Yeah, you're talking about no,
about? Yeah,
no. They, and
yeah,
let
he
me
was
tell you,
Dutch, German,
they
Dutch.
German Dutch, right? And they have like it was a big tradition there as far as
Hmm.
I believe when either people were sick or when strange stuff was happening, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. You would go look up for a powwow to like take care of the problem for you, find out where the source was.
yeah,
Who was
and,
like
and
if
if you
somebody
go,
hexed it, you needed somebody to contra hex them. How's
yeah,
that?
yeah, do another hex to undo it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you go up into Pennsylvania, even in Maryland and Virginia and
Hmm.
Ohio, you'll see these old barns, and they have those giant stars, and
Yes.
everybody's like, "Oh yeah, those are really pretty stars," and they don't realize that's the hex star is what it's called, and it was
Hmm.
to ward off. And it was basically not. And there, people are like, "Oh, ward off evil spirits." I go, "Well, it went beyond that. Because they did believe in all these monsters. So it was to ward off these monsters. And most of them, if you look at them now, if you buy them, they're made out of tin, but they were iron. They were like, and they weren't as big, but they were smaller iron stars
Hmm.
because iron
Yes,
kind of
will
warded
repel.
off the different creatures. So
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. And those were like, yeah, there was like there wasn't anything. How can I say dark or occult in the sense of the what we think of it now.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
They were like used as talismans or amulets, in the run of the mill, against the farm animals on your farm and all these things to keep
yeah.
everything safe. Because I know
And,
people sometimes would get like, let's say if your cow stopped producing milk, that they'd be looking for like, whose fault is this?
yeah, exactly. Like, well, who put a hex on my cow?
Who put a
And
hex on my cow?
and then,
Exactly,
I mean, that's
exactly.
kind of where the Bell Witch thing. I don't know if you know that, where
Yes,
that thing
yes, of
kind of.
course.
I mean, it's very that was the kind of like where that all went, was like he blamed the lady for his misfortune, and then she just made it worse. and and so you know, like you
Well,
don't piss off people like for you know.
well, and that let me tell you something. That haunting of the Bell Witch was always really weird because it
Mhm.
had so many people that came around
Oh
to
yeah,
witness it
yeah.
that you're
It's a
thinking,
bizarre.
okay, well, I mean, yeah, some people might be primed and other people are lying, but not that many people altogether. Something had to have been going on there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Something. Yeah, and I think what I really think happened was she probably was kind of into the powwow type stuff and knew how to do stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the whatever I can't remember his name, Mr. Bell, uh,
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a from all accounts he was kind of a jerk,
Right.
and he was kind of rude to his own family, and I think he pissed this lady off and kind of blamed her for things, and then she goes, "Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
think I'm doing it? Okay, well, guess what? I'm about to do it."
Do it. Yeah, right. Yeah, get a load of this.
All right, you think I'm bad? Okay, I'll show you. Like, yeah, I mean, and it's kind of you kind of understand that mindset. It's like, okay, you're blaming me for all this. Okay, now I'm gonna show you what's really gonna happen. And so,
Let me ask you something, Gregory. Have you run across in your research something that they call the white thing? I think it's
yes,
Virginia or West Virginia,
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. The white thing. It's in West Virginia,
Okay,
and
West Virginia.
yeah, it's a white thing. It's also they also call it sheep squatch.
Yes.
The other name
Yes.
that it has, yeah, that's another one, and that's a cool one. West Virginia has some
Right.
cool stuff, man.
I know, but and usually, like a bunch of people have cited it. Like it's been around for a
Yeah,
while. You
yeah, it
know
has.
that
Multiple people seen that. Another one that multiple people seen is known as Braxy.
I haven't heard of
Uh,
that. What is that?
that all right, that one's another weird one. It kind of it's kind of like an alien, but it's this creature that had green face and a big like red outfit, and like multiple people spotted this thing and it wigged them out. And this was I think 1950s,
Okay,
and um, it kind of floated. It
a,
had no feet.
like a gliding motion.
Yeah,
That's
gliding
interesting.
motion in the woods. But like you said, but yeah, the sheep squatch or the white thing is
Right? Yeah. I
a
guess that's.
big deal down there. And like I said, lots of people saw it. There's a beer named after it too.
Are you
Um,
serious?
yeah, you can buy
They
in
need
West
the mirror. That's
yeah,
funny.
there's a company in West Virginia that makes all the different cryptids in West Virginia. They have
Yeah.
beers named after them. I've tried a couple.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right. That's
so if
interesting
you go to West
marketing.
Virginia, get their beer, try it. The
Sure.
white thing's pretty good.
The white.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I had heard that. Yeah, like from what I saw, and I was surprised because I was thinking, well, is this a like a light colored supposed Bigfoot? But then you said like the same. Some people have said that it looks like either it's got the ram's horns or it's got a sheep,
Yeah, ram,
and
yeah,
I was like, well, that's different, you
and
know?
yeah, it's and it's not friendly. Like,
Right?
which
It's
is
not.
very, in which the Bigfoot stories are kind of interesting. Like sometimes it's like, oh, he's not. And people want to hug it,
All right.
but then when you actually read a lot of stories, like you don't want to hug this thing. Like
No.
none of them are good. Like no one that seemed to encounter them have a good
Right.
experience.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
not like Harry and the Hendersons.
Right.
So
And I think everybody wants them to be the way they want them to be,
yeah,
and
and
perhaps
then
not the way they are.
yeah,
And
and
yeah, we really don't know.
yeah, like any like you see, like most of them talk about them throwing giant rocks at you, and
Hmm.
then and again that I get into like I made fun of the ghost people, so I'm about to make fun of the Bigfoot people, and they may get mad at me, but it's the same thing. The people who are on the shows,
Yes.
not necessarily people who believe in Bigfoot,
Right.
but the ones who are on the shows who say the ridiculous things. Again,
Right.
bothers me because they'll say something like, well, as everybody knows, Bigfoot likes this. And I'm always like, well, if you know that, how come you've never caught him? Like if you know
Right.
Bigfoot likes that and does that,
Right.
and and the other thing is like they'll do the wood knocking and or they'll be doing the different howling. And
Hmm.
again, I'm always in my mind, I'm kind of like thinking if I were to go to a foreign country and try to speak their language and I don't really know it, and then I'm just saying random dumb things to like if I'm in France and I'm just saying croissant and souffle, and
Right.
they're like, dude, what? Just
And the
thought,
best, and you're hoping that what you're saying is not like
yeah,
offensive.
offensive. Yeah. So you're knocking the wood together and you're saying, I think your mom's ugly. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. It's
and
like then
then
you're
it's like,
getting
oh, really? That's why it threw the rock.
right, exactly. Well, I spoke to this. I interviewed this gentleman. His name is Jim Smith. He's passed on, and he ran a Bigfoot group since the 1970s out in Alabama.
Oh,
And one time
cool.
he told me this story. He had this lady he knew of. She lived out in Alabama, and she lived kind of in the rural area, where the backyard, after you clear an area around your house, and all you got is woods.
Yeah.
So she lives here alone, and she's getting in her head about doing those whoop calls and doing the tree knockings. And I guess she had opened up a dialogue with him, and he kind of told her, hey, you need to be careful with, like whatever.
Yeah.
So she's doing this, and sure enough, he related to me how she started realizing that something was coming into the yard, and she had, I guess, like a one of those poles like lights that you put out in your yard, like
Hmm.
towards the shed, and she realizes that something's out there, and she
Hmm.
keeps on doing it, but she says she doesn't understand really at one point. She thinks she starts getting this feeling that it's not like you were saying. This is not the Henry from the Henry. This is not
Yeah.
like a furry animal, big Chewbacca that wants a hug from me kind of deal.
Yeah.
To the point that then she just stopped doing it because she says something about it gave her like this, like she was being stalked. And she says, sure enough, a couple of times she heard something walking on like the perimeter outside of her house.
Oh, wow.
And then one time she had some porch furniture, and it ended
Hmm.
up getting like messed up, like something took it, and she says I
Yeah.
wasn't going out there. And eventually she said she got scared, she realized, and then she just did not do that again. Eventually it just went away. She
Hmm.
lost like I think a couple of chickens or something like that.
Oh,
But
wow.
up until the point that she started the whoops and she had never had any encounter.
Hmm.
It was when she could basically called it in.
Yeah.
And for all you know, like I tell everybody, what if you're whooping and you're doing a mating call? Hello?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Well, yeah. What are you?
You're
What?
gonna get a big surprise. And but yeah, that's the same thing, and that sometimes you really don't know who's listening and what they interpret it as and who's gonna show up.
Yeah.
And like I
Yeah.
said, yeah, I know a lot of people, it's a feel good kind of thing, and everybody wants Bigfoot to be nice, but this doesn't mean
Yeah.
that's gonna be that
Yeah,
way.
I mean, just because you want it, like if you read a lot of the stories, he wasn't nice. I mean, even, like I said, Teddy Roosevelt wrote about Bigfoot in one of his.
Hmm.
I mean, he called it the hairy man because Bigfoot,
Right.
that name didn't come for a while, but and the first experience he wrote about, it didn't end well for the people.
Right.
Like the one guy got murdered, the other guy was pretty much wigged out. Um,
Sure.
but their encounter didn't end well at all. It's kind of in my mind, especially like dealing with cryptids. Like there's some I believe are completely made up,
Right.
and there are some I'm like, okay, there was something there. With Bigfoot, I'm kind of like, I think there is something out there. Uh, Maybe
Okay.
not every time. I
Yeah,
think, like you
sure.
said, it could be a bear or whatever, and people just are really hoping
Well, I
for
mean,
Bigfoot. But at
right.
the same time, you don't know what you're dealing with, and it's almost like I've never played with a Ouija board for the simple fact is I don't know who I'm talking to.
Just in case.
Yeah. And so like you said, like you're communicating with this thing, you don't know its intention and you
You
don't know
know,
what you've just said.
you know what?
And
One
so
time I had a guest, and he gave me an example. He goes, when we were talking about Ouija boards, and he goes, "Look, you know what? The way I look at a Ouija board, it's like if you throw a phone inside a prison, who do you think is going to get to that phone? It's going to be the
yeah.
biggest, baddest of all those prisoners." And I was like, "Okay, never thought of it that way."
No, that's a great analogy. Yeah, I never
Yeah, I was like, "Okay,
I'm gonna have to remember that because I've had friends be like, dude, yeah, just try it. I'm like, that's it now I
yeah,
just
right,
mine was always like I don't know who's really on the other side. I
sure."
don't trust it. Like,
It might not be anything. It might just be like, but what if it's not? Same thing when you were talking about, these people on the ghost hunts, and I'm gonna, that do that confrontation,
oh
or
yeah,
they're trying to get it, and I'm like, you know what? For all you know, might there's nothing there. Or it's thin air.
yeah,
You're trying, but what if it's not? What if you're trying to provoke something that is
yeah,
maybe, that if you actually were able to see it,
yeah.
you'd be
You'd
like,
be like,
no,
oh yeah,
no,
yeah.
nah, I'll pass on that.
That
Yes.
yeah, that's. and I go, my thought is it like with the ghosts is like whenever they're like it's children ghosts, I'm like, no, it's not.
Oh my
I'm
God,
like,
yes. I tell everybody that. I said, you know what? When every and I think I'm going to tell this from the as a paranormal investigator of many, many years. I said people have a hard time thinking that a spirit, whether it's human, non-human, can be so manipulative as to
mhm,
impersonate a child. We take it at face value that if it sounds like a child or identifies itself as a child, it's a child. Of course. How could it?
yeah,
And I think, do you know what most normal humans do, adults, with children? Their guard goes down.
yeah,
They immediately think, oh my God, it's a kid. My God, well, that's so, everybody's,
yeah.
and I go, and what? You might be manipulated. What? They don't think they can manipulate you? And everybody's like, what? I go, of course. Of
Oh
course
yeah,
they can. So yes, coming back to what you were originally saying, yeah, the thing with a kid, it's really like, oh boy. All right.
oh
Okay.
yeah. It's I mean, yeah, it's just that stuff wigs me. Like I said, that wigs me out. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why the monsters don't wig me out as much. I don't know why that is, but like probably because in my mind is I would be able to see it coming.
Right.
so
Right. Right.
so
I'll tell you what, as far as cryptids, and I'm talking about here, the better known, I would wig out if I saw Bigfoot, but the one that really is like, and I don't know, it's the dog man thing, the dog
oh
man
yeah yeah
sighting
yeah
that dog. I'd be like, oh,
yeah
that's like that thing will want to eat me. Like, because of
oh
course I'm
yeah
thinking werewolf, we've been primed to, that's, let's face it, a wolf without the
yeah
cryptid thing, we know it to be a, big predator.
it,
And once upon a time used to eat, and attack people. So I think a basic instinct is like wolf, like, uh-oh.
yeah exactly. And I think a lot of those stories also came from there is that disease where people grow
Yes.
hair everywhere, and there's a really cool story, and I can't remember the guy or the thing's name, but it was in Scotland,
Okay.
and it was a dogman type story.
Mm-hmm.
See, it was a nice dogman. It's like one of the few where
Okay.
he would leave food at people's homes that were like needy. Like
Okay.
he was supposedly a good hunter because he was this werewolf, is what they believed.
Okay.
And this was back again in like the 1500s.
Okay.
And as I researched that story more, I think from what I've read is that I believe that he was came from royalty and he
Okay.
had that affliction, but he
Mm-hmm.
was shunned by his family
Sure.
and like hidden and
Mm-hmm.
not shunned as in they kicked him out, but they kept him hidden and he would
Mm-hmm.
go out and help the people at,
Right.
at night. And so he's one of the few dogmen. I wish I could remember the name, but it just completely slipped out of my
Right.
head.
And people don't
Yeah.
realize that back then, the family, like that was, especially, if you had aristocracy or you were important.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you weren't insane, but in this case, something like that,
Yeah.
they didn't want you around. They, like you said, they kept you hidden because pretty soon
Oh yeah.
people were going to think, hey, we're going to be that family. Nobody will want to marry us, one
Yeah.
of our
Your
people, because
bloodline is
the
messed up.
bloodline or some stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I could see that definitely happening as far as, you know,
Yeah. And what they
weird
didn't
stuff.
realize is the way they were doing the bloodline is probably that's why they had all these problems is because they
Sure.
had that family tree was a straight line.
Yeah. 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 Too
They
much.
messed up.
Yeah. They wanted
There-
to stay too close to the.
yeah, like, it was like,
Even now, we see it with dog breeds. If they're too pure, they get a
oh
bunch
yeah,
of weird
yeah,
problems.
really, yeah. The like
And
their
that's why
bones
I
mix and
have
all
all
that.
my dogs are mutts. All
Oh,
my are
nice.
mutts, like that. Sometimes I look and I go, I don't even know what you are. You know how you
Yeah,
sometimes you can tell in some dogs. Mine are like,
yeah.
who knows? But there's did you God, there was one cryptid that the Van Meter. That's it, the
Oh
Van
yeah,
Meter.
Van Meter, Iowa.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Van
that
Meter
came.
visitor. Yeah.
What did you find out about that? Because wasn't
Now,
that like an isolated sighting and then it
yeah,
stopped or something like that?
yeah, that was in the night. That was again in the early 1900s, and
Okay,
I did a whole episode, and that's another cool story. Um,
okay,
so that creature, when you hear its description, had a glowing horn, had wings, was humanoid, um, and it terrorized the town. And I think it was in October.
okay,
And I can't remember the exact dates, but with that story is another one where all these prominent people saw it. So
Right,
what
right, right. I heard something that,
in a whole town, like the sheriff saw it, and then what was interesting, like I think a doctor saw it first. Uh, he reported it, and they're all like, "Oh, dude, he was probably drunk."
uh-huh.
And then the next night, the sheriff saw it, and then some other, and then all these people saw it. And what's fascinating with it, I believe the sheriff shot at it, and
Okay.
it did nothing. Like it just
Oh,
like he shot it, and he was about 5 feet away from it when he shot it.
okay.
The thing actually leaped from one building over a street, which was about 20 feet apart.
Okay.
Um, it was actually shot also with a shotgun. It did nothing. Um, and so eventually it was chased into a mine in Van Meter, and they collapsed the mine on it,
Okay.
and it was never seen again after that. Um, so I started because I was like, okay, what could it have been? So I was trying to figure out what this thing could have been.
Right.
And I was like, okay, maybe it was a guy and he had a bulletproof vest. And that's why. And so I started researching that. And yes, there was a bulletproof vest available at that time. But the problem is it would have cost basically like in their currency $100,000 to buy this
Wow, that's a
vest
lot. Yeah, back then that would have been. I
back then.
imagine also
And
must have weighed a lot.
yeah, it did. It did. It was almost like a suit of armor. And I was
Yes.
like, okay, who's gonna buy that just to prank a town?
Right.
And the thing, and whoever it was super agile and was able to run, jump, and fly. And so I was
You
like,
know
well,
what? And that's
so
like you said, all the upstanding citizens, you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about?
yeah, it's all all the legit guys who would not want to be known for seeing this thing saw
Right.
this thing. And then it got to a point where not only these prominent guys, the whole town saw it at one point and saw it
Wow.
go into the cave, and they blew the cave up.
You know what's
And I
really
was like,
funny is that if that would happen today, there'd be people, no, don't kill it, don't shoot it. And over there, they're
yeah,
like, hey, give me that shotgun.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
put, hey,
And what
take it to
they,
the mine, blow up the mine. Nowadays,
yeah,
it'd be like, no, and then, the big, back then it was like, whatever it is, it's jumping around, it's got one big eye. We're
yeah,
getting
yeah,
rid of it.
yeah. We gotta get rid of this thing. It's like it's
Yeah.
freaking out the town. And that's another one where then that story kind of went away. They didn't talk about
Hmm.
it much. And then in the 1990s, it hooked up. Now they have a Van Meter festival,
Okay.
and now they celebrate it. And it's like
Right, right.
they love their monster now.
Yeah, well,
So
that's
yeah,
something like the Mothman thing that it took
yeah.
off far beyond, I think, what the original intent was of it.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, when it originally they were scared to death of it, and like I guess
Hmm.
people died because of the bridge collapsing, and they believed
Right,
the Mothman either was an omen to what it was going to happen, or it did it. Um,
right.
and so for like, there's about a good 15-20 years where they didn't really want anything to do with it, and now again,
Hmm.
now that like I said, they have that big beautiful statue,
Yeah, they
and
have the
and and
statue, they have a museum.
and they have a whole festival. I think it's
Oh,
like a
yeah.
whole weekend. It's like
Yes,
it's a good time.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't make up, is it a portent or, does it warn, or is it that if you see it, that's it, you're doomed? Like, forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is
It
it warning
causes
you
it.
or yeah? So
And
and
it
there's
didn't hurt. I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, that I know there's other supposed sightings of a similar creature like at other places. People have
Hmm.
said they've seen it like at in Chicago and New York and
Yes, lately
Baltimore.
there's been these sightings around Chicago, and I was like, what? Mothman in Chicago? What?
Yeah. And I don't know of anything bad time. I do know that that bridge that collapsed in Baltimore, uh,
Really?
supposedly
Oh,
someone
wow.
said they spotted the Mothman in Baltimore, or a creature like the Mothman in Baltimore a week before that bridge collapsed.
You know where
And
they
so,
said they saw something which is like whether it's a flying humanoid or like that Mothman kind of like deal, like where because you
mhm.
got like, was prior to when Chernobyl melted down.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I did, yeah.
Yes,
So it was
right,
like over in Russia hanging out.
right. And who's gonna go and find out? It's like, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of the things that supposedly they had some sightings just prior to the Chernobyl incident.
Hmm.
So is it, what is it? Is it a warning, or it's like, yeah,
Or
with
is
me
it causing the
comes,
issues? Yeah.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
again, nobody knows, like, because nobody can talk to it. and get close
And
enough.
truth is, who wants to?
Yeah, I don't want to. Like that's
No, but
another one. Yeah,
that one with the Mothman, it didn't hurt it any that when they made the movie, the Mothman
yeah,
Prophecies, that didn't hurt it any. That was a very way out there movie.
yeah.
You know,
I was sad because I really wanted to see the Mothman in that, and then all you saw were some glowing eyes at one point.
right. And it's always making you think, is it real or are these people all going crazy or
Yeah,
what's going on
exactly.
with
Yeah,
this? Is this guy just tormented because he lost his wife, the Richard Gere
yeah,
character and but then it gives you these hints like there's stuff going on. It's like, yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting movie.
yeah,
Thinking outside of the box kind of deal. But let me ask you, as far as the thing with the dogmen, I know that like you said, they have different names sometimes depending and
yeah.
different like the Bigfoot. Sometimes depending on where it's sighted, what part of the country or
Yeah,
the town.
like I know, well, obviously, like Bigfoot in Florida, they have the skunk ape,
Yes.
the grass man, hairy man, wild man. I know in
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, there's one called, which is one of my favorite. They call it a booger,
Yeah.
and so
Yes.
which is a funny to me, funny. And then Murphysville Mud Monster was a Bigfoot.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, so like with the dog man, there like the original name.
Right.
Obviously there's Wolfman, uh,
Mm-hmm.
like over in Europe, but then in America they had the Hex Wolf, which is
Right.
basically what they called it. And then in my area they have the Hex Wolf, and then it transformed into the Dwayyo was another
Okay.
name for it, and then Dogman. And
Right.
I guess the big first real big Dogman incident was in Michigan, and
Right.
I know there are other stories of it, but that's where
Right.
they really first started calling it a dog man. So
Yes, that got that name, that moniker.
yeah, and there was a song or something, and but
You
and
know,
that's
when
a
they
weird story because at one point someone said they saw it, then this DJ said it was a hoax, and then the DJ said no, it wasn't a hoax, and then all these people see the dog
right,
man.
no, there's people that say and then they recant, but then they say, no, I really was lying when I recanted, not really
Yeah,
when I was. And it's like, okay, whatever.
yeah,
There was this was lost somewhere in there if there was, whatever.
yeah. And the same thing kind of happens with Bigfoot too. Like some people are like, "Oh, I saw this," and then they're like, "No, it wasn't." And then later, they're like, "Okay, it was." And then it's like, I don't know. I think people get nervous about this kind of stuff because they don't want to. At one point, they're like, "Yeah, it's cool to be associated." Then they're nervous, like, "Wait, people think I'm crazy, so I recant." Then they're like, "You know what? I can't take it. Yeah, this really happened." So I don't know. Like
Yeah, like yeah,
humans are funny
somewhere
that way.
right, like wherever the truth lies is like, yeah, once your credibility is shot, it's really difficult to get it back. When it comes to that, if you're gonna stay the story, stick to it. Whatever it
Yeah,
is, stick to
exactly.
it.
Yeah. Like
The what you call it? As far as the skunk ape here in Florida, a lot of people don't realize is that out in the Everglades, sometimes it comes up only to your knees. Everybody sees people in
yeah,
airboats,
yeah,
that they have these hammocks. You can jump down and basically in some of these places walk around. Let's say
yeah,
without an airboat, it's kind of like muddy, but you can get around out there. It's not like deep water that you're saying, well, how can this thing get around?
yeah. And if it lived there, it probably
Yeah,
knows the
yeah,
area,
mm-hmm,
and so I mean, it knows, and it is an animal, and animals are smart about
sure.
knowing trails, where to
Their
go to,
environment.
and that's the funny thing is like people don't realize that like early Americans and Native Americans they would follow animal trails because the
Yes,
animal trails would lead them to water. And
yes,
so it wasn't like we invented the idea of roads. It was like
right,
animals had already done, they knew, okay, this is the area where we go to hunt. This is the area where we sleep. This area where, so
yes.
they had made, so they, humans were like, okay, I'll follow these trails.
Which is
And
the
so,
smart thing to do.
yeah, because like animals are going to take you to the necessities, because
Right.
they're not going to take you to the wants, they're going to take you to the needs.
Yeah,
So,
the water and water is one of them for sure. A watering
yeah,
hole.
yeah,
That's like super, super important. But I think that and the other day I read something which I hadn't read. This happened. This lady, she had a sighting of Bigfoot in 2014, something like that.
Hmm.
Like way back. My God, what was
Yeah.
her name? But anyway, she turned around and she sued the department, like the I guess the equivalent of Fish and Wildlife in California,
Yeah.
because they needed to recognize Bigfoot. You know, like in other
Hmm.
words, they needed to recognize it as a real species. I had never heard of this. She passed away suddenly from a heart attack or something like that. But I
Oh
had
wow.
never read about this, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think that they would ever do that short of either a carcass or a live animal.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're not. I don't think they ever will, but yeah, it's
You
wishful
know,
thinking though. You know. They,
I was like, wow. I go, whoever that lawsuit, I don't think they must have been like, nah, lady. It's
yeah.
like, no, we're not gonna do that.
She had some
And
time
she
and
had had
money.
her own experiences. She had had sightings. She says when she was with her daughters, and she had had a couple of sightings. This is what she was basing it on.
Hmm.
And and I was like, you know what? And this is the thing. There's so many groups and individuals running around out there trying to prove that Bigfoot exists.
Hmm.
That believe me, they're gonna find a suit long before Fish and Wildlife does.
Oh
They're
yeah.
not going to spend all this time. All they're running around trying to take care of poachers and animals and all this other.
Oh yeah.
They're not going out there to try to, prove that
Yeah.
Bigfoot exists. And but yeah, sometimes I look at it and I go, is this really an animal? Is it more human-like? I mean, there's so many theories out there.
Yeah.
And I think along the same line as when you see other types of cryptids, do are they intradimensional things that come from
Yeah.
another
That's
dimension? That's why they pop up and then they disappear?
it. And I've talked to some people about that, like the whole idea of at least Bigfoot being interdimensional,
Mm-hmm.
and and I find that interesting because, like you said, it pops up, disappears so fast,
Yes.
and um, you don't ever see clear footage of it. And one of the
Right.
interesting theories on that I've run into is that they if it is interdimensional, if it's from a different dimension, the
Mm-hmm.
wavelength that it lives on is probably different than ours. So
Sure.
its body is vibrating at a different rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes into our world, a camera can't focus on it because it's similar
Right.
to like the stealth fighter and stuff where it had this paint on it and the angles so the camera couldn't focus properly. And
I
so
never thought of that.
if this
That's very
creature's from a different dimension and it's vibrating in a way, you'll never get a clear shot,
yeah.
even if
If
it's standing
if you
still.
get one, all you're gonna get
Mhm.
is some fuzzy
Yeah,
whatever.
and that's been like a theory that I've run into, and I was like, well,
That's
if
very
that's
interesting.
true, I go, that makes the most sense to me.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Let
and
me
what,
ask
yeah,
you the one of the ones of the cryptids that it's like an overlap is like the thunderbirds and or
oh yeah, and the
pterosaur
pterodactyl, yeah,
or like and sometimes I've heard of the stories where it looks like a dinosaur, like the leathery wings, and then
hmm,
I've heard of sightings where it's like a very very large bird, as in with feathers,
right.
but just really, have you come across stories about that?
Yeah, and I have, and what's really cool,
Okay.
and that I find cool is that now, according to paleontologists,
Okay.
most of the dinosaurs had feathers.
Wow. Yes, I had once heard of that, and I said,
Yeah,
but it just
and,
never dropped off the map. So they're coming around
and
to that idea, huh?
yeah, so did the pterosaur actually have leather wings or did it have feathers?
Ah,
And so the thunderbird being these giant, and,
yes.
and, and when you see some of the paintings that the Native Americans did of them,
Yes.
they look kind of like a pterosaur, like it has the head and the beak kind of thing, but it
Yes.
has feathers. And
Wow.
so then it's made me wonder about that, as well as if you look at it, this kind of falls in the same thing with dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you see a painting of a dragon from like the Middle Ages,
Right.
when people are like, "There's no way that ever happened." Well, there's a lot of drawings that look like what we know dinosaurs to be,
Exactly.
except they have feathers or they have these wings, and it's like, well, we know they didn't have that. Well, now paleontologists are saying, well, like an interesting one, a paleontologist just like 2 years ago said perhaps the small arms on the Tyrannosaurus Rex weren't arms. but were wings.
Wow.
And when you look at like they're comparing it to, I think, to an emu or something, and
Okay.
that it's when you see the skeleton of emu, it looks like it has tiny little arms, but those are its
Ah,
wings. And it was a flightless bird, but they're like, was Tyrannosaurus Rex had wings? It was flightless, but it
right.
had these giant wings
But it
or
was a
these wings.
bird.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's so interesting.
and
Yeah, because you always look at the T-Rex and it's like, what can I do with this? Like, hello.
like, what was the point?
What was the
But
point?
then
Yeah.
when you see what like an emu or an ostrich does, like when it's facing off against something else, it pulls its wings out, spreads
Hmm.
them to make it look even bigger. So it
Yes.
might have also been a defensive thing that
Of
it did.
course, if it's lined with feathers, absolutely. Wow, that is such an interesting concept. That
Yeah,
explains a lot. Like, why would this huge dinosaur, this carnivorous dinosaur, be running around with two little front? It's had
yeah,
these powerful hind legs, but it's got these two. But that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense. Where,
yeah.
uh,
And the whole dragon thing to me is interesting because you also get into like Marco Polo,
mm-hmm,
um, and if you've read his book or his tale, he talks about all this stuff as he went across, from Italy over to China.
right,
And as he talks, he's very descriptive.
mm-hmm,
And archaeologists and everything are like, "Oh yeah, that's real, that's real, that's real, that's real." Then he gets to this point where he talks about dragons in China and how the Chinese emperor has a dragon pulling his chariot, and he has a guy there that's paid to be a dragon tamer, and he talks about all that. And they're like, "All this is true," but then when he talks about that, that's not real.
yeah. Like, why would he start lying about that?
Yeah, and it's one chapter,
Right.
and they're like, this one chapter is all made up, and you're like, well, why?
Ah,
Why? Like,
right.
and we don't know what he's seen. Like, it could have been big Komodo dragons.
Yes, it
It
could have
could have
been.
been just a giant lizard of some kind. The thing is, the way he describes it, it was very similar to kind of like a triceratop, is how he describes it.
Really,
Like
how
he talks
interesting.
about it having like a shield head or something. Um,
And that's not
and
a Komodo right there.
No, but it's some kind of big, but it could have maybe they put a shield on it.
But you know
They're
what?
Chinese.
You look at
They
a lot
they
of the Chinese art, and they have incorporated the
yeah.
dragon, a very
Hmm.
fierce looking dragon, by the way, into their
Yeah.
art.
Yeah,
That you think, okay, so how, like you said, these different civilizations or cultures that were hundreds or
yeah.
thousands of miles apart, they have some representation of a dragon like creature. How? Where did they get this idea from?
Yeah,
Coincidentally?
yeah, where they and they're like this one I also find really cool is the unicorn.
Yes,
Um so we all think of unicorn right now. Like if you hear unicorn, people think of a white horse with a horn and it's got
yes,
rainbows and it's like
yeah,
happy and it's
uh,
so pretty. Everybody loves it. Well, we now know, like if you go back to old stories of unicorns, they weren't they were scared of unicorns. It wasn't like it was a happy thing. And even
right.
In the Bible, there's a mention of the unicorn in the book of Job. I mean, there's also dragons
Right, that
mentioned
the
in the
only
book
one
of
that
Job.
could tame it was a maiden.
Yeah,
That was the thing.
right.
Everybody was scared
Yeah,
of it. Like,
yeah.
yes,
So, but like everyone's afraid of them, and but now they know that there was a creature known as, and they call it now the Siberian unicorn, and it was
okay,
a relative of the rhinoceros,
okay.
but it was furry, kind of like the woolly mammoth, but it had
Uh-huh.
one singular horn coming out of its head. and
Wow.
and it was discovered, I think it was discovered in the like 1970s, 1980s was the first
Okay.
one they found, but it didn't get, they're still not sure, because but now they've found more, and because they weren't sure if it was just like a deformity of some kind,
Right.
but now
Okay.
they know this was a real thing.
That is so
And so
interesting.
at one point they actually say that it was all the way through Russia into Europe and down into Africa that this creature
Right,
roamed.
because that up in Siberia, they found these carcasses which are so well preserved
Yeah.
because of the cold.
Yeah, and so, like, now they know, well, that was what a u in my mind now, that's probably where they got the idea for the unicorn, and over
Yes.
time, we turned it into this happy little thing, just like, woolly mammoths were fearsome creatures, but, you got the movie Ice Age, everybody loves woolly mammoths, and once, because it's Ray Romano doing the voice, and they think it's a friendly thing, and Now,
Well,
if you ran into one, it would stomp on you. So,
well, there was stories back at the turn of the century. There was some newspaper stories where up in like the Yukon and up in
hmm
that area, which by the way, out there it's famous for finding mastodon bones.
hmm
That there were stories from the Indians, and they had a couple of because they had these fur hunters that would go out there in the middle of like nowhere, who was claiming that there were live mastodons.
hmm.
Okay, that there
And
were
there probably were.
sightings,
Yeah.
live mastodons. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so this is hard. This is a hard animal to mistake for anything else.
Yeah.
It's like, but that there were sightings supposedly around the turn towards the end of the 20th, I mean the 19th into the 20th century, that the Native Americans in that area also told about seeing them, and that one of them had even tracked one to the equivalent of like what they call the elephant cemetery where they all go
hmm
to die,
Yeah.
had tracked one down there. But it was one of those things back then, oral, as far as somebody
Yeah.
telling you about it, like where was it? But that area is replete with mastodon bones all over the
Oh wow.
place. So yes, that makes you think. Same thing. In other words, that we always think these creatures, if they did overlap with people, they didn't, or it was very small time period.
Yeah.
And they were saying the same thing for the vampire bat
hmm
down in South and Central America. A lot of Mesoamericans incorporate the bat, the vampire, because down there they do have the vampire bat,
Yeah.
and that they were thinking that they found some fossils like buried in caves,
hmm
and that they're thinking that they might have overlapped with humans, like
hmm
that they left very recently,
hmm
and as like were we ever that fear of the vampire bat was that's what drove it was because I believe it's a very besides the blood drinking thing, it's a very large bat.
hmm
It's a very
Yeah.
large bat.
Well, I mean, I know also that like a lot of times when that you go to like Central or like South America or even Africa, and like scientists will show pictures of these supposed extinct creatures and show a picture, and they will know and they'll give it a name,
Right.
and they'll like, oh yeah, we see that all the time. It's like up over there, and you don't want to mess with it. And then people are like, what? It's like,
Uh,
but they
you know,
know exactly what they're talking about. And again, these are people who are living in the jungles, and
right.
I don't think they're having a sense of humor. Like, oh, this is that.
Right, like,
Let's
oh,
just
let me
mess
make
with
this.
like let's just make this up. When a lot of times they're like they won't like there's certain rivers they won't go on at certain times a year because of the creature that's there.
You know
And
what I tell everybody? You know how sometimes, wherever it's at, but let's say the natives or the people that live in that area, they'll say that mountain, don't go to that
yeah,
mountain, whatever's going on with the mountain, don't go to the mountain. And they stay away from the mountain. But then you have the scientists show up and go, where's that mountain? Oh yeah, we got to go out there and trek out there and see what it is. And it's like, hello,
yeah,
the people that live there for years, maybe ages and decades or hundreds of years, saying, stay away from that mountain because there's
yeah,
something that goes on in that mountain. And, sometimes we get like, we need to find out what's on there. And
and yeah, don't mess with it.
well, I'm sure you heard of the ones in Russia, the Dyatlov Pass people, the
Yeah,
ones
yeah, and
that they have, from what I understand, they've never really given, even though technically it's been a closed investigation, but they've
mhm,
never really given a satisfactory answer why the bodies were so mangled. How's that?
yeah, yeah, they're messed and like why they were running around without clothes on, and
Yes.
like
Yes.
what something happened, and they, there's so many theories, but it's like nobody knows, and
Right. Like, and of course,
something
among
happened. Yeah,
among was that they had their version of a Bigfoot kind of monster up there.
yeah,
And
and
they found, was it three of them or four of them, and then the others they had to wait till the spring thaw came to find the
mhm,
rest of them. But they were all of them
yeah,
were, their injuries were not. They were not like, okay, well something fell. No, it was like they were harmed. It was
yeah.
very violent.
And I know that like the ones in the spring, and they pointed this. I know this part is kind of odd. Is that other animals didn't touch the bodies,
That's interesting. I got,
and
that's one of those things that I'm glad you mentioned it.
like so like meaning that the other
What?
animals knew
Something.
these something else had, so they had no right to it or whatever. I don't know what it was, but they said they found the bodies. And yeah, there was like from rain and winter and wind, there
No,
was stuff,
no.
but I'm saying that there was like skin torn, but it wasn't
Right.
like wolves should have come by and devoured these
Exactly.
people, but they didn't.
Well, that's what you
And
hear
so
about these cattle mutilations.
yeah,
That they'll
like
say
they
that
don't,
normally predators, everybody comes in usually with there's a dead animal, no,
and
a
they live on
normal
the earth.
death.
Yeah,
Everybody fights to get a piece of the carcass,
yeah, and
and
what didn't they want?
they say some of these ranchers out there, they'll
Hmm.
say we just got to leave it out there, and nobody's gonna come. They won't touch it. None of the predators that usually come, coyotes, nobody does takes it,
Yeah,
which is really weird. Like, what
yeah,
do they know, or what do they sense about it?
yeah. Is it a trap to get more? It's like what is
And this is the thing. Most of these, like I said, animals out there, especially predators, they spend most of their time looking for food. That's what
Hmm.
it's all about. And normally, something like a cattle is like you're gonna have everybody coming in to get a piece of it. And when it basically the ranchers, from what I understand, have to leave the carcass out there and just let it decay by
Hmm.
itself. And nothing's gonna touch it or take away the bones or scatter it. Nah, forget it. And
Yeah.
I've always thought that's like what is it about these. And I know they've taken tissue from some of them and tested them. Like, does it have a disease? And maybe the predator thinks, okay, somehow their instinct knows this is a sick animal. They go, no, they've tested the tissues and it's not like a sick animal
Yeah.
as to
They
why
don't
the
know
predators
what
stay. What?
yeah, they
Right.
can't explain it.
They can't
And,
explain it. Like, what is it that, yeah,
and
there's so
I
many
know
mysteries out there.
yeah, and then also like parts of the insides are gone and they can't figure out why. And yeah.
It's, they say the parts that are taken, they say, are usually the less desirable, less of
Hmm.
the whole entire cow. You know how
Yeah.
they have those diagrams. What they take, which is the tonsils, the tail, the uterus, or whatever. They say these are
Yeah.
the basically the trash part of a cow
Yeah. Yeah, that you wouldn't want.
that you wouldn't
Yeah.
want, or if they sell it, it's like it's very cheap.
Hmm.
Like what? What is that?
Yeah. Like who wants it and
Who
why?
wants that? I mean, of course, looking at it through our perspective. But
Yeah.
yeah, some of those things out there, and it's not only cattle. Basically, it's any of these animals that they have found that had some type of what they call ET mutilations, and we really even don't have a good explanation for that at this point.
Yeah.
You
And like
know, like how many
why
cows do you need to
yeah.
kill to figure what out? That's
Yeah.
that's at
And
least my
why are they, if it is aliens, why are they flying all this way just to kill a cow?
cow. And how many times are you gonna kill one? It's
Yeah. Come on.
like, exactly. So I don't know. Sometimes that's a very unusual. And from what I understand, I've read that some of these ranchers who have had these ranches for years, they said, "Hey, aren't you going to call the police or whoever?" And they go, "What for?" In
Yeah.
other words, at this point, they realize I'm going to lose X amount of cattle to this.
Hmm.
And there's nothing I can do about it. Nobody's going to come out here, give me an answer, help save the cow, nothing. So they're just like, they deal with it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing they can do about it.
Yeah. They're just losing money.
Right. Like, you know how when you have you always factor in a percentage of loss,
Hmm.
from what I understand. And I know that some of these cattle, they can be quite expensive
Hmm.
depending on the bloodline and things like that. And of course, getting back to the thing of the Bigfoot, you always hear also these hunters where their kill is carried off by Bigfoot or something,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And what's the God, what was I want to say it's a cryptid puckwudgie? Is that it?
Oh
Is
yeah,
there's
Pukwudgie. Yeah, yeah, that's
okay,
in Delaware. Yeah.
okay. That's a real wasn't there recent sightings of that, or is that one of those
Yeah.
that's been
Some people claim to see they're small
mm-hmm.
little things. They kind of look like a mix between a porcupine and an elf,
Okay.
and but they're not nice
Oh,
and they're not friendly. Uh, they're mischievous
okay.
and they're known for like trying to push you off cliffs in trails.
Oh, okay.
So
All
and
right. All right. Okay.
and I
That's
think I try and remember the guy's name. Hawthorne. I think that's the guy, the author. He
Nathaniel
wrote,
Hawthorne?
yeah,
No.
Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote a
Okay.
poem, and he mentions the puck wedgies in it.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's the Song of Hiawatha.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay. That's
it's mentioned
interesting.
because and the thing that's weird, like originally Puckwudgies and humans were friendly. They liked each other. They got
Uh-huh.
along, and I
Okay.
can't remember what happened, but suddenly they became enemies. And it's a Native American folklore,
Right.
and but yeah, they messed around with.
You know what? That thing about mischievous, pushing you over a side of a cliff is a little bit beyond
It's a
mischievous.
little beyond
You are
mischievous.
being very nice there.
Yeah, they're they mess with you, and they're like, there you go. And so, but yeah, they're
Right.
like,
This is along the lines, you hear about fairies that they're mischievous, but never make a deal with them with one of them because
yeah, and
you're gonna
don't
get the
step in their circle. And
right. You're gonna get the short end of the stick on that deal somehow or other.
yeah, it's never well. It's just like with the leprechauns getting their pot of gold. It never really
Right.
ends up well. Like you don't want to mess with that. And yeah,
And it's incredible. I don't know if you read about that story. This was maybe like 100 years ago. I want to say was it Scotland or England, where they had these two little girls that supposedly they had taken pictures of these fairies.
oh yeah. The fairy pictures, yeah,
Right. And I mean, everybody got in on this. This was like adults were like, and some people were saying no, that this was that the girls had supposedly done cutouts and put them in the lawn and taken pictures. I don't know.
yeah,
And they never, as far as I know, I mean, the girls eventually grew up, but they never said if they had done it as a prank. And it just took
yeah.
you.
They never. And when I've seen the pictures, and they're fascinating. They're really
Yes.
very cool. And I don't
Right.
know. I mean, if they did it at that young age, they were amazing artists
Right. And this, when something
and
like takes on a
amazing
life of its
photographers.
own, and it's like,
Yeah,
boy, we can't say now that we lied about this or we're in
I mean,
trouble.
yeah, like you look at it and you're like, man, they didn't even have Photoshop back then, and they were like,
Exactly.
whatever. I go, they were really good artists. Two, they were
Yes.
really good photographers, and
Exactly.
they were younger than my daughters. And I'm
Yes.
like, for me, it's one of those. It's like I
Like
like
if,
what was going on there, like
exactly. Exactly.
and like
Like,
I said,
man.
they never came clean and said, oh yeah, that was us joking. They just
Right. They never grew up and said, "Oh, by the way, you know what? That stunt that we pulled back like a few years ago, it
yeah
was all make believe."
yeah. So it's like that's another crazy story. Yeah.
And
So
to finish off, Gregory, what can you tell me about the Loch Ness that we haven't heard already, which is a lot because every once in a while it goes
well,
away, and I think I saw like a couple of months
yeah,
ago somebody took a picture or something.
they recently took another picture of it, and
Uh-huh.
there's a group going back to it. And the Loch Ness
Okay.
monster's a to me it's a uh, I mean it's your gateway cryptid.
Right.
That and Bigfoot. But he the very first story of Loch Ness is Saint Columba, uh,
Okay.
which again is another story where you're like, dude didn't need to write about it. It didn't help him out in any way to record this. He was from Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
came to Scotland, and was trying to convert the Picts. I think that's what
Okay.
they're called, and they were
Yes.
a very fierce group, and they weren't going to become Christian, but then he was down by the loch with one of his followers. The Loch Ness monster attacked his follower. He stood
Okay.
up to it, fought it back, and said, "Go away by the power of God," or whatever he said.
Right.
And the thing fled. Well, the Picts saw this, and they
Oh,
converted to Christianity because of this incident. And then
okay.
St. Columba wrote about it and just sort of put it in his monastery, and the Picts built a monastery for him. And
Okay.
so that's the first story. But like when you think about it, the Picts were pagan. They
Yes.
wanted nothing to do with God. And suddenly they turn, become Christian, build a monastery for St. Columba
Uh-huh.
because of him fighting the Loch Ness monster.
Right. It
And
was
so
must
you're
have
like,
been some convincing, in other words,
I
for
think,
them to do that.
they claim to see it happen.
Right.
Like they saw it all go down, and you're like, well, something happened there because these guys were fierce, killing Christians all over the place, and suddenly
Mm-hmm.
they changed their mind.
Yes.
And you're like,
Exactly. What
how?
happened? What happened that would make them do that?
Yeah, and so I do know that in the locks there are all these tunnels, and they believe a lot of
Hmm.
these tunnels do go out to the sea. So I've been trying to figure this out because I think there is a cycle of when the Loch Ness monster is seen
Right.
in the locks, and I kind of in my theory, this is just a theory, and it could be wrong. I think this creature lives out in the ocean,
Okay.
comes back to the loch for mating, kind of like salmon go up the
Hmm.
stream and they mate, and then they go out and they're back in the
Right.
ocean. And I
Yes.
think the loch is where they mate, lay their eggs, whatever, and then they leave.
Yes.
So, like, it seems to be they're only seen certain. They're not seen all year round. It's certain times of the year. So I
Hmm.
think they come in via tunnels. But yeah, recently someone took a picture of something that,
Yeah.
like, whatever it was huge, and
Yes.
it was a series of pictures, and you kind of see a flipper, and it was big, and it was like,
Right, exactly.
yeah,
And let me tell you something, that is true. A lot of animals, when they're going to lay their eggs or give birth to their young, they would go to a place like this versus the open ocean where they
yeah,
could lose the offspring. It's
yeah,
like
and
that
they
makes
yeah,
perfect sense. Yeah.
and a lot of creatures go back to the same spot,
Yes.
and then it's generational, and
Yes.
the next generation goes back to that. That's where I was born. This is where we lay our eggs, and we don't know what the gestation period is of when they can do it, because it could be like these things could be old and maybe they live like 100 years,
Yeah, for
and
us
they
it's like
yeah, and they mate maybe when they're in their 80s, and so
right.
that's why it's not
It's
as
us for
there's
us
not
to gauge, maybe they reach sexual maturity at age 100. I mean, as far
yeah
as for procreation purposes, because maybe they live
exactly
500 years.
yeah
I'm just,
yeah
whatever.
I have no idea, so yeah
That I had not heard that story about, say, Columba, and that the pigs all become Christianized because of
him
the that
scaring it off, yeah, it's
God, that
and
is
like it's I find that fascinating, like those.
yes, yes, and again, I
And
I
again,
agree with you.
yeah, and it didn't, other than, and he didn't tell the story to the Picts, they witnessed it. And
Right.
he wrote down in his story, he said, the reason they came is because they saw me do this. And then he never went on to talk about, like, it was kind of lost to time for a couple hundred
Mm-hmm.
years. And then all of a sudden, they're like, what? And it's like,
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, a lot of different people don't realize that, even when the Romans were out there and everything,
yeah,
the
they
people, they were
spotted
steeped
things.
in their own pagan religion, their identity, whether it was the Celts or whatever, and they were not having none of this, like, we're going to become, Christianized. They're like, no,
Yeah,
or no, we're not. So
yeah,
that's very, very interesting. God, wow. So let me ask you, you said you got 10 volumes planned. Are you coming
yeah.
out soon with any new book, or did you just release anything?
Well, I got volumes 1 through 4. They're
Mm-hmm.
here and they're all color coordinated,
Oh,
different
wow.
colors for each volume.
Okay.
And then I said I'd never do it, but I did write a big book, and it's called
Okay.
Sasquatch and Me. And
Okay.
it's a fictional book. I was watching a Jane Goodall documentary where she
Right.
was with the apes,
Okay.
and in my mind, I thought it would be funny is instead of apes, I did it with Bigfoot.
Oh,
So it's
wow. Interesting.
me going and living with Bigfoot for like 3 years. And so it's fictional, but it's just like story of what happened with me and Bigfoot in the wilderness. And so it goes along the lines of Bigfoot's friendly to an extent.
Right.
But it's just kind of a goofy. But
I
yeah,
like that.
I plan on getting book volumes 5 and 6 by the end of this year, and
Okay.
so I have all the drawings done and all the stuff written.
And
I
I
just
and
gotta
and
put
I
it
love the
together.
title for your books. What was the first one? What was it? The Happy Monsters,
Yeah,
or
they're all it's all Happy Little Monsters, volume
okay.
1, and then all of them are Happy Little Monsters volume 2, 3, and 4, and so they're all on Amazon, so
Okay. Okay.
that's where you can find
The,
them.
Let me tell you something. I think that I think that there's a lot of stories out there again that
Hmm.
We look at it and we go, "Oh, that can't be true." And
Yeah.
then, when you really start reading into it, you're thinking, God, I had to have seen something. So that was
Yeah.
something there that
Yeah.
made these people like actually write about it or how's this, put themselves out there, which they,
Hmm.
because people don't realize back then people didn't forget about that stuff. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
you were the guy that said that you saw the whatever, like the thing in the building with the one eye.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That thing that you said it ate your sister, and it's like, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Let me see if I can hold on a minute. I wanted to show everybody your, let me see. Here we go. These are your books over on
Yeah.
Amazon. There you
Yeah.
go.
Oh yeah. I also have a Christmas book.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. It's the creatures are stirring, and it's all the Christmas monsters and
Oh, wow, that's
a couple
great.
ghost stories. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so you're gonna be, oh, here's that Sasquatch in me. That's
Hmm.
excellent. Wow. This is
And
great. So let
then
me ask you.
Transcendental Tourist is the ghost book that my friend Chip wrote, and I
Okay,
just sort of put it together for him.
okay. All right, so you're going to, as far as you're gonna be putting out, man, 10 volumes. You must have so much material. You must be a great researcher.
Yeah, I love doing it. And it's one of those like because a lot of these stories are really old and they're
Mm-hmm.
getting forgotten.
Sure.
And
Yes,
so
I believe it.
that's kind of why I want to write them all down because everybody knows, like you said, Bigfoot and Loch
Yeah,
Ness,
right, right, right.
but you don't know about the dingo neck
Never
or
heard of it. Never heard of
yeah,
it.
or the Capalobo. And there's
Yes,
all these like monsters all over the world that
right.
people talked about, and now they're like
Mm-hmm.
kind of fading away, and
Yes,
because people just aren't keeping them together. So
right. And a lot of these things, it's depending on what part of the world. In some cases, it's oral tradition.
yeah,
There's no writing per se. So unless you know somebody from that part of the world, for them to tell you, oh yeah, there's a story of the whatever, blah 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 blah.
yeah. And what I tried to do is I tried to go back to like the first iteration of the creature because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times like the stories are told and then it gets bigger and bigger and things
Sure.
change on it. So I try and go back like when I do the artwork for it because I do all the artwork for it as well.
Oh, you
Um,
do. Great.
yeah, I try and go back to the first sighting. So like whatever it was described the first time it was seen, that's where I go with the look. So like when you get to like I have like the uh like greenie from New York, which is kind of like uh, like kind of a Loch Ness.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the original how it was described because as it became this huge thing, which
Okay.
would have been impossible to have existed
Okay.
in this lake. But the original wasn't as big, but it was still terrifying. But
Right,
it's
right, right. But like you said, the original one sounds more plausible
yeah,
as far as for the
exactly.
setting of where they're seeing this thing.
Yeah.
Now that you mention that, oh God, it's this little town in California called Lone Pine. It's
Hmm.
basically like a ghost town.
Hmm.
And it's been used as a movie set like from the 20s and even into modern times. But they had a lake out there because it was basically what it was mines
Yeah.
out there that had high alkaline and boric acid.
Yeah.
Basically, it could go through leather. And that that one time they had a sighting of a sea serpent in it, and I was like,
Hmm.
"What? How the heck? How's that gonna work?" And they had a couple of miners and this other guy who ran one of the mills also saw it, and I
Hmm.
was like, first of all, how did it get there? And number two, how could it exist
Nobody
inside
else.
this lake that's like it
It
could
is.
chew
Yeah.
through leather. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you hear some of these sightings and like, I don't know about that. I think
Yeah.
you found that at the bottom of a bottle.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's where you saw it. You didn't see
Well,
it in the lake.
like they said in Ireland, like if you want to see a leprechaun, drink before you go out.
There you go. Definitely you'll see
So,
something.
yeah.
Again, Gregory, has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you. For my podcast listeners, what's the place they can find you at?
Well, you can. I'm on Instagram, and it's and I post up there all the time. That's G Fedora, G underscore Fedora underscore crypto.
Okay.
The other places on YouTube, I'm on there all the time. And if you just type in the Fedora files,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find me, as well as on Spotify. I do a podcast
Oh,
where
excellent.
I tell different folklore stories. It's basically what I do on the podcast. So
And is that under the Fedora files also?
yeah, if you just
Okay.
do the Fedora files, you'll find on YouTube. You also find on Spotify and wherever else people listen to
Yeah, I'll put
their
I'm going to put a
podcast.
link anyway in the credits of the show. But again, thank you so much, and I want to wish you the best of luck in all your projects.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I'm going to keep an eye out and bring you back so we could discuss some of those cryptids nobody's ever heard of. Never
Oh,
heard some of the stuff.
yeah. I'll put together a list.
Excellent. All right.
So,
Thank you. Take care.
thanks.
Wow, that was great. Let me tell you something. It's true. Everybody's got this on the treadmill of you know Dogman and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, and there's a bunch of all these other weird things. Like he said, sometimes they appear for a little time period and then that's it, and the story. And then there's others that they surface around every once in a while. And like in other words, that you could even say you could trace back that hey, the original people that were on this land had stories about it. In other words, it wasn't like a modern invention. Um, and that thing about the dinosaurs having feathers, I had heard about that for a while. And again, I guess fossilized. If you only got bone, I don't know how to make the jump to that. But what he was describing sounds like a possible theory. Let's say for the T-Rex, like why these little arms went in cut. Because it's true, you spread out wings and it makes you look more fearsome. That makes more sense. Um, yeah. And even now they're still discovering some type of different dinosaurs here and there. They might look like something, but they're separate in and of themselves. So I mean, there's a lot of the reason why I say this is, everybody's like all caught up in space exploration. Don't get me wrong, it's very interesting going to the moon, going to Mars, yippee. But I think there's so much here on the planet Earth that's yet to be discovered, whether it's inside the oceans or if you're like one of those, like me, like I would never see myself in a submarine or nothing like that. There's a lot of stuff to be discovered here on the land, even underground as far as digging and because we think that they've discovered, as let's say from a paleontology point of view, that okay, that most everything has been discovered, and I don't think so. Especially now that they're realizing that some of the timelines that they've given for whether it's when man was around, and as far as like I said, they've had to revise that modern man interbred with Denisovans and Neanderthals, and now they're having to rewrite like did we overlap with certain animals that we thought were extinct? Like, by the time that man came around, like these animals were by. Um, and well, not too long ago, they came out with the information that they had found all these different, basically subterranean. What's the? I don't want to say passages, but the subterranean things under the Sphinx. All right, that makes it look like all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, so that's what what this is about. All right, as far as the because everybody's at one point they said when they started digging around the Sphinx, for example, they realized that it was deeper and that there was because of the watermarks or the water table or something like that, that they realized, hey, this has been here longer, or that the how's this the timing that we've given on this as far as when it was built by the Egyptians is not really uh it's not really accurate. Okay. Um in other words, there's here it is. Mm. This came out, God, you know what? I'm here going a couple of months. You could tell I'm Uh, no, no, that wasn't it. Oh, come on. The discovery of small sphinx. Okay. Underneath Sphinx. Wow. Discovery underneath pyramid. Was it the pyramid? Maybe I'm making stuff up. Here it is. I'm sorry. I'm making stuff up. I am saying the Sphinx and it wasn't the Sphinx. It was underneath the pyramid, which is right next to the Sphinx. But in other words, that, everybody's always, there's always been a mystery. First, it was supposed that the pyramids were supposed to be, uh, obviously, a tomb, but they could never find any proof of the tomb. And let me see if I can get this up here. This is out of the New York Post. As you can see, there's a vast underground city below Egypt's Giza pyramid. Scientists' wild theory claims, but experts debunk it as fake news. Oh, let's see. Researchers claim they've discovered the legendary Halls of Amenti. And this is from March 23rd. Okay, so I was right about that. We're not even a month out from that. In a vast city beneath Egypt's Pyramid of Giza, a wild theory that has perplexed archaeological experts who dismiss the claims as fake news. Italian and Scottish scientists studying the Pyramid of Khafre say the groundbreaking study has redefined the boundaries of satellite data analysis and archaeological exploration. Aptly named the Khafre Project, Corrado Malanga from Italy's University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi of the University of Strathclyde in Scotland led the expedition, which is the second largest pyramid. Okay. Scientists said they located five small like structures inside the pyramid using synthetic aperture radar or SAR technology. One structure contained a sarcophagus mistakenly thought to be the pharaoh's tomb, the team said. Blah, blah, blah. The groups claimed the five structures previously unknown before the images were found in the center of the pyramid. Right? And they're connected to pathways that lead below the surface and are believed to expose hidden rooms and wells under the 4,500-year-old wonder. Electromagnetic signals were turned into phonic data that unveiled larger infrastructure leading down thousands of feet underground. The eight large vertical structures, theorized to be wells or shafts, are thought to extend over 6,500 feet across and 2,000 feet below ground. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And the reason why I bring this up is that as it relates to today's show about cryptids, is that the world of science and academics, I'm not saying they're always wrong, but a lot of times they hold tight to their theories, especially if they've built a reputation on it or a university, and they don't let go. And anything that challenges it, they're like, no, that's like that. What they're saying here, that they're debunking and saying that whoever's claiming this is wrong, and sometimes, I mean, all these studies that they've done of Egypt and the pyramids and the Sphinx and it turns out that now they're discovering stuff because, of course, now we have the technology to do it. All right, where it seems that this thing was being used for something else than just, you know, a nice triangle on the landscape, on the horizon, right? Or as a tomb, or as what? And again, this is one of the things that this is Marlene's personal theory. Whenever you see all these ancient cultures, because again, just like in Mesoamerica and other parts of the world, they still can't really explain some of the engineering or the technology that they used to basically quarry, bring the stones. Even in Stonehenge, they still haven't figured it out. The design, to make it all the way to the top, they still can't quite understand that. But besides that, that takes a lot of manpower. All right. And what people don't realize is when you use that manpower, which I imagine maybe they've taken years, we're really not sure. You're taking manpower away from the soldiers. I mean, even say, well, slave labor. Let me tell you something. Even the slaves were used. They were used to for crops. Tend cattle, uh, basically sustain or bring in food for the city. Okay, in case it was a lean year. In other words, this wasn't like a one day thing. So whenever, to me, I always think, okay, when you pull this much manpower out of producing for that city or that whatever was there to basically haul stones around, and for sure they lost people along the way just because of accidents. How important was it that they did that? That you might risk being coming up short on food because of famine because you diverted some of your people to work on this whatever it is or digging down in this case instead of planting food or harvesting or whatever it is or hunting so that in case something happened you would have food to distribute to your people. All right, so let me tell you something. Usually that's what brings down empires. It's lack of food. All right, when food runs out, it's when everybody is like, that's it. The gloves come off and, empires topple. So when, I always ask myself, what was it that would inspire them or push them to do this? And how did they do it? Besides the how part. And coming back to the thing is, as far as cryptids and monsters, a lot of people are like, no, 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 that's all made up. And I agree. Some of these things you read about and you're like, come on. All right. This could come straight out of a kid's fairy tale book. But I think there's a lot of other stuff that who's to say that it does not exist or did not exist at the point in time that it was seen and described. Because we're quick to say, oh man, back then people were superstitious or they were stupid or they didn't know what they were seeing. I was like, superstition has nothing to do with what you see. All right. And like he was saying when we were talking about the Van Meter sighting, this thing was seen by all the the town fathers, everybody, like the sheriff, the doctor, the mayor, a bunch of people that your credibility had to be good because you had a role in that town, and all of them, and one of them taking a shot at it. All right, like why are these guys gonna wake up one day and say, why don't we make up this story about a creature that with one eye of all things up on the roof line and it jumps around and it seems to be bulletproof. Come on, come on. What is that? So yeah, like everything, I guess my point is like everything, like even when it comes to archaeology, paleontology, and even the study of cryptozoology, if you want to get into it, you might dismiss it, but you should always leave that door a little bit open because when you least expect it, the proof that everybody's been saying, well, because I haven't seen this or I haven't seen that, it happens. It happens. It's produced. It's produced. So I think that without leaving planet Earth, there's plenty to still discover. Exploration and discovery here on planet Earth. How's that? A lot of it. God knows. So anyway, guys, I hope you like this episode with Greg. Check him out. I'll have a link to his probably to his main website on the credits of the show. So if you want to check it out, or if not on Amazon, you can find his books. And also, he's got his own podcast. And again, sign up for my newsletter at mppellister.com or miamighostchronicles.com. Again, you have links to everything there, all of my shows from the first one, which is going to be 8 years ago, to now. I have them all, whether it's the video or the podcast, whichever you like. And of course, you can find me on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, I'm there. FM player, even the ones that you've never heard of before, I'm there. And besides YouTube, you can find me on Rumble, you can find me on Cloud Hub, Steemit, BitChute, blah 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 blah. And the only reason some people say, "Oh, I think is it Vimeo or Daily Motion? I can't remember which one of the two is that because they limit you. Like you can only like upload like an hour. And it's like a lot of these shows run for more than an hour. So otherwise, I'd be there too. Is my point. So guys, come back. Thank you for being here with me. And again, I've got a lot of great guests lined up already for. As a matter of fact, I already started production on season 18 of Stories of the Supernatural. Right? Don't miss it out. because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on out there. Till next time, take care.